Hi, my name's Nick, and as I'm new to YouTube, or I should say new to putting videos on YouTube, I thought I'd give you a brief tour of my workshop. I'll start on the mechanical side. Pillar drill, vice, hand drill, and grinder. And over here we have a Variac, very useful for testing pieces of equipment. It may or may not be faulty. If you don't want to apply the full voltage, you can wind it up gradually from 0 to, and the digital meter doesn't really start till about 70 volts, but up to I think about 284 volts. And next, Weller soldering iron. Well, a few of these. It's the old TCP model. I find them excellent soldering irons, even though they are old. And I got a few from a car boot sale a few years ago. Anyway, another vice. And various cleaners and sprays and chemicals, whatever. Over to the main bench. Siglent spectrum analyzer. Great analyzer with built-in tracking generator. This is the 2.1 GHz model, which is more than good enough for what I do. I did have the DSA 815 Rigel, but this one's far superior in my opinion. Anyway, up we go to the arbitrary waveform generator by Rigel. This is quite a good unit, and although the only limitations I've found really is you can only get a square wave up to about 5 megahertz, but I only really use it for audio anyway. 2-channel output. Move over to multimeter, HP 34401A. I got this off eBay about a year and a half ago. Unfortunately, the display was a bit dim, which is a common problem with them as they get old. But I managed to get a new display off eBay from China. After a bit of hassle getting it in, it seems to be okay, although it's not tremendously bright still. Okay, over to the oscilloscope. It's the Rigel DS2072A. Only 70 megahertz bandwidth. Most modern scopes these days, digital scopes, go up to 100, but it's okay for what I do most of the time. If I want to measure high frequencies, I use the spectrum analyzer anyway. Okay, another Weller soldering iron, and up here is a little soldering station I got from China, fairly cheap, with hot air blower and soldering iron to do more fine work with a sharp bit on it, like surface mount, that sort of stuff. Okay, let's move up to the shelf. Up here we have Marconi or IFR 2024A. Bought this on eBay for a fairly good price a few months ago. Only problem was it had all the connectors on the back, as that is one of the options. So I had to reroute 2 cables to the front, one of which was the RF output, which uses semi-rigid coax. So that was a bit of a hassle doing that, but it's working fine now. The other problem with it was, even though it was advertised as in full working condition, some of the buttons were not working. So anyway, I took it to pieces and got some stuff off eBay for repairing TV remote controls, and Seems to work perfectly now. What I like about this particular model, it got a resolution of 1 Hertz, frequency resolution, all the way up to 1 gigahertz. Also, although I didn't realise at the time when I was bidding for it, it was advertised as 10 dBm output only. There's an option for a high power version, plus 25 dBm, which is virtually a transmitter. That's like 300 milliwatts. When it arrived, I found it was that one, that version. So, which is always a bonus to have extra high power. So this one goes from minus 140 dBm up to plus 25 dBm. Particularly useful to have the low range, the low power level of minus 140 for testing receivers on radios. Okay, moving down here we have a HP 3460A broadband sampling voltmeter, which, as I can see, needs zeroing. Quite an old bit of equipment this. It was designed in the late 60s. It's basically an RF voltmeter that will go from about 10 kilohertz to accurately to about 500 megahertz. Also useful for measuring RF power, well, up to 20 dBm anyway, if you terminate it with 50 ohms. Moving across is my old RF generator, the Marconi 2022E, which I've used for probably 20 years, and I've had great fun repairing it. As there's a known problem with these is there's a thick film IC in there, RF amplifier IC, made by Philips, and they gradually all die. So one by one I had to replace them all over the years. There's about 10 of them in there. Now it works. It's been working perfectly for about 10 years, but it's limited in its capabilities, and also its phase noise is nowhere near as good as the 2024A. But it's still quite a good generator, and compact and light and easy to carry around. Maximum output 10 dBm, minimum minus 127 dBm. Okay, above that we have GPS DO, GPS disciplined 10 megahertz oscillator. That's really great for making sure everything's, all your equipment has got a stable reference. I'm feeding the 10 meg output to both RF generators and also to my Raycall Dana 1998 counter. This is a really good counter. Had it about 10 years. Resolution of, I think, about 1 millihertz on a 20-second gate. I love it. It's just a great counter. It goes up to between 10, in two ranges, 10 hertz, or two inputs I should say, 10 hertz to 160 megahertz, and the B input is 40 megahertz to 1300 megahertz. Great counter, love it. Okay, moving across. Dual power supply, digital readout, variable current limit, 0 to 32 volts, 0 to 5 amps on each power supply. You can parallel them if you want more current, 10 amps. Above that, big power resistors on a heatsink for testing audio amplifiers. Combination, I can combine them for 4 ohms, 8 ohms, whatever. Should have a rating of about 100 watts roughly on that heatsink. Okay, moving up a bit. Homemade digital clock, which I first made this design back in the early 80s. It refurbished it recently with bigger displays, and it uses the MFS signal. It used to be at Rugby, which sends out a time code, and it's always accurate. And they've moved the transmitter now to Cumbria, so the signal's not quite so strong, but I still get a reasonable signal here. Okay, moving down we have HP 8903 audio analyzer, testing distortion, frequency response of amplifiers, whatever. This particular model, when I bought it, had the option for the inputs and outputs on the back, but it was fairly easy to move them to the front because the cutouts for the connectors were behind the plastic stick-on panel, for want of a better word. Moving down a bit, Hitachi stereo receiver, not particularly great unit, but it's just there for entertainment purposes more than anything. And as you can see, like the Pioneer video I did, I stuck a digital display in it. You can get these digital displays off eBay. They're 8-digit, although you can only see 4, of course, on this. I mean 5, because you only need 10 kilohertz resolution on FM. But they only cost about 10 quid on eBay from China. You can get them in red, blue or green, I believe. And you can they've got programmable IF offsets for the local oscillator, which is good. Okay, don't think there's much more to see really. Component drawers, various other junk on the shelf up here, SWR meter, and a few handheld meters, LCR meter, HP LCR meter, drawers, various RF connectors, as I do a fair bit of RF work. Homemade RF attenuator, 10 dB, fairly good up to 500 megahertz roughly. Another one, this one's 20 dB. Made these about 30 years ago. Okay, I've got a big RF attenuator in this cupboard if I want to do work on transmitters. Picked this up at a radio rally years ago for, I think it was 10 quid, very useful. I think it's 30 dB, it's 100 watt rated, 30 dB attenuation. So if you want to measure something on a spectrum analyzer, you can safely do it using something like this. I think it's rated to go up to 1 gigahertz. Put that back in the drawer. Nothing else very interesting in that cupboard. Lots of tools, small hand tools, cutters, pliers, knives, whatever, you know, sort of thing. I think I'll just finish off with this little box here. This is RF dummy load, bought from China recently. RF attenuator, 10 dB. Homemade 10 dB attenuator, fairly flat to about 1 gigahertz. This used to be a 6 dB attenuator, but I blew it up, so now it's a 10 dB homemade attenuator. Another 6 dB and another 10 dB, that's a 6 dB, right. Okay, I think that's about it really, nothing else interesting in there. Various terminations, 50 ohm terminators. So that's the tour of my workshop. Hope you enjoyed it. If you watched it, goodbye.